My name is Jessica, and for a long time I believed that being wanted meant being loved, until I learned how dangerous that mistake can be when desire feels like connection and attention feels like care. And the first time I met Ryan was at a friend's birthday party where the music was loud enough to hide thoughts and the lights were soft enough to make strangers feel familiar. And he didn't ask about my job or my life or what I believed in. He just looked at me like I was something he wanted immediately. And that look alone made my heart beat faster because I had spent years feeling ordinary. And suddenly I felt chosen without effort. And when he leaned closer and said I had a dangerous smile, the kind that made people forget what they were supposed to resist, I laughed even though part of me knew I should be careful. Because being desired feels powerful when you've spent your life trying to be enough in quieter ways. And we talked about nothing important that night. Just about how good the night felt and how easy it was to stand close. And when he kissed me, it wasn't slow or thoughtful. It was urgent, like something he had already decided. And I didn't stop him because urgency can feel like honesty when you're not asking the right questions. What started between us was intense, not deep. And I didn't know the difference at first because intensity feels like meaning when your heart is hungry. And I told myself that the way he wanted me meant something real. That his hands and his words were proof of feeling, even though we never talked about where we were going or what we were building, only about what we felt in the moment. And I ignored how he never asked about my family or my past or my fears, how he never wanted to meet my friends, how my world started shrinking down to his apartment and the sound of his voice saying my name. And I accepted that, because asking for more felt like risking what I already had. And nights with him felt full while mornings felt empty, like I was borrowing warmth instead of building it. And every time I left his place, I promised myself that next time would be different. That next time we would talk about something real, and next time never came. The first time I asked him what we were, he smiled like I had said something cute and told me we were just enjoying each other, that labels ruined good things. And I nodded even though something inside me tightened because enjoying each other sounded temporary, and I wanted something that didn't disappear when it stopped being convenient. But I didn't push because I was afraid of hearing an answer that would force me to walk away, and that's how I learned to accept half-truths as if they were enough. And the more I accepted, the more I gave, and the more I gave, the more I believed that desire could grow into love if I stayed long enough. If I proved myself enough, if I didn't ask too much. The truth found me in the most careless way, not through a confession, but through a moment I wasn't supposed to see. One afternoon when he asked me to grab his phone from the table because his hands were full, and a message appeared from a girl whose name I didn't recognize, and the words on the screen sounded exactly like the words he used with me. Playful, familiar, intimate. And for a second I told myself it meant nothing because desire doesn't always mean betrayal, but my chest felt heavy because I had seen that tone before, and I had felt it on my own skin. And when I asked him about it, he didn't look surprised or guilty. He just said we weren't exclusive, that I knew what this was, and that sentence hurt more than any lie because it turned my hope into my own mistake and my feelings into something I had imagined alone. I remember standing there trying to understand how I could feel so close to someone who didn't see me as something to protect, only something to enjoy. And when I told him I thought what we had meant more, he said I was taking it too seriously. That attraction didn't have to become attachment, and that's when I realized how differently we spoke about the same nights. Because for him, they were moments, and for me, they were meaning. And walking away from him wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like closing a door in a place that was never meant to be home. And the hardest part wasn't missing him. It was missing the version of myself who believed being wanted was the same as being valued. For weeks after, I replayed everything in my mind, every look, every touch, every word that made me feel special, and I wondered which parts were real and which parts were just desire pretending to be connection. And I hated how easily I had let intensity replace honesty, and slowly I began to understand something I had never been taught, that lust can feel like love when you want it to, but it never protects you the way love does. And that wanting someone isn't the same as choosing them, and being desired isn't the same as being cared for. 3 weeks later, I met Daniel in a grocery store aisle when we both reached for the same box of cereal and laughed about how dramatic that moment felt for something so small. And he didn't look at me like something he wanted immediately. He looked at me like someone he was curious about, and that difference felt strange. Like standing in a quiet room after being in loud music for too long, and we started seeing each other slowly. Coffee dates, long walks, conversations that didn't rush anywhere, and I noticed how my body still reacted to silence as if something bad was coming, how every delay felt like rejection, how every calm moment felt suspicious, and when I told him about Ryan and how I had mistaken desire for care, he listened and said, "That sounds like it made you feel disposable." And hearing that word out loud made my chest tighten because it was the truth I'd been avoiding. And he said, "No one should feel like they only matter in the moment." And that sentence felt heavier than every compliment Ryan had ever given me because it didn't make me feel exciting. It made me feel safe. Still, safety felt boring compared to chaos. And I hated that about myself. The part that missed urgency instead of honesty, the part that still believed being wanted meant being chosen. And the real test came when Ryan texted me again one night, not to apologize but to remind me how intense things had been between us. And that old pull rose in me like muscle memory, and I realized the choice in front of me wasn't between two men. It was between two versions of myself, the one who accepted desire as enough, and the one who was learning how to wait for care, and I didn't reply to him, not because I was angry, but because I was tired of being wanted in ways that didn't keep me. When I finally chose Daniel, I didn't do it the way I had chosen Ryan, without questions and without protection. I chose him carefully, like someone choosing a path instead of falling into it, and we built something slowly, through conversations and consistency, instead of urgency and intensity, and I noticed how different love felt when it didn't have to prove itself through heat, how calm could feel safer than excitement, and how I didn't feel like I had to perform to keep his interest. And months later, when I thought about Ryan, it wasn't with anger or longing, it was with understanding, because he had shown me a version of myself I needed to see, the one who thought being wanted meant being valued. And Daniel showed me another version, the one who could be valued without being chased. My story didn't end with a dramatic fight or a perfect romance. It ended with a quiet change inside me. The shift from wanting to be chosen to choosing myself first, and that changed the kind of love I could accept, because I stopped confusing attention with safety and desire with commitment, and the day I realized lust was never meant to carry love on its own was the day I finally understood why my heart had been tired all along. And now when someone wants me, I ask what they're willing to protect, not just what they want to feel, because love that lasts doesn't rush in and disappear. It arrives gently and learns how to stay.